This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Several killed in coal mine accidents in China's Chongqing city. Brexit trade deal enters a final stage as December 31st deadline looms. And 22 million people in DR Congo facing high levels of acute food insecurity driven by conflict, COVID-19, flooding, and economic decline. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to you live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines. South Africa expects first vaccines from COVAX scheme in second quarter of 2021. And Turkey in weekend lockdown as coronavirus cases hit record highs. We begin in China, where 23 people are confirmed dead after Friday's coal mine accident in the southwest. One person was rescued from the mine in Chongqing. The deaths were caused by carbon monoxide poisoning. The mine was built in 1975 and it's been run privately since 1998. This is the second such accident in Chongqing in just over 2 months. Let's take a look now at the deadlock in Brexit negotiations. A trade agreement between the EU and the UK failed to materialize on Friday after a week of talks in London. Now, Prime Minister Boris Johnson and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen will talk directly to try to break the impasse that's dragged on for months. But time is running out. Britain is due to leave the EU single market on December the 31st with or without a trade agreement.
We've had a week of intensive talks between negotiators here in London. They seem stuck on the main three issues that have troubled them the whole way through this negotiating process. So what's happened? They've kicked it upstairs to the bosses, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, to see if they can break this deadlock. So the question is, will this sort of political intervention manage to come through with something? It hasn't, though, over the last few weeks. So a lot of sort of insiders are saying that right now it's a 50-50 chance. So things are really heating up and it looks very fraught for both sides indeed. Now, France is saying that it wants access to UK fishing waters for the next 10 years. Obviously, for the UK, which has said that it wants to control its borders. Germany, though, is still trying to push for a deal. It's trying to get France on side. The other big issue is level playing field. Now, the EU wants to make sure that the UK can't undercut it, that it can't sort of get into EU markets by offering a better deal or by refusing to stick to sort of European Union standards to do with food and trade and agriculture. And then finally, it's the big issue of governance. Who will actually control and rule on how this deal will be enforced? Because the UK has said that it doesn't want to be part of the European Union Court of Justice.
The South African Health Ministry says the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines from the Global Vaccine Distribution Scheme COVAX could be available in the second quarter of next year. Angela Coppola has more on this story.
In a statement released on Friday evening, the ministry says it will be signing an agreement with the WHO-led COVAX program by December the 15th. The plan is to purchase enough vaccine to cover 10% of the country's population, so around 5 million people will get the vaccine. Part of the signing of the deal involves a down payment of around $21 million. The ministry does estimate that the doses will eventually cost the country around $140 million. At the moment, it's unclear whether the entire batch of doses to cover those 5 million people will arrive at the same time or not, but it's most likely to be spread out over a period. The authorities here aren't putting all their eggs in one basket, though. There are currently 4 candidate vaccines being studied in South Africa, with other manufacturers looking to conduct trials here too. Zwelin Kize, the health minister, says that while they favour the COVAX facility, they will keep their options open, one of which is the Johnson & Johnson trial taking place in the country at the moment. And that's because South African pharma company Aspen has been commissioned to produce 300 million doses of that candidate vaccine if it passes muster and gets approval. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Turkey is in its first full weekend lockdown since May after coronavirus infections and deaths hit record highs in recent days. Our correspondent Michelle Bar-David filed this report about the restrictions and the country's vaccinations plans.
The lockdown does not include working hours during the week, so basically they're trying to protect the economy, which means that millions of people will be going to work on Monday once again. Millions of people once again will be using transportation. So basically the government has tried to prioritize in terms of the safety of the economy to prevent a financial meltdown. When announcing these measures, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan stated he wants to protect the economy, stating that they are taking steps carefully not to turn the health crisis into a full-blown economic and social crisis. Now, the Turkish health minister Fahrettin Koca has stated that Turkey signed a deal to purchase 50 million doses of Coronavac from Sinovac. Now, the first shipment is expected to arrive on December 11th. Now, Turkish labs are first of all expected to test these vaccines for safety as well for this country. They are expected to take about 2 weeks, these tests, and hopefully if they are all positive, according to Turkish authorities, the government will begin vaccinations in 4 stages. In the first stage, they will include health workers, citizens above the age of 65. The next group would be essential workers and people above 50 with at least one chronic ill disease. The third one would be people with younger than 50, also with at least one chronic disease, and then the rest of the population. Now, Turkish President Erdogan has stated that these vaccinations will be free of charge to Turkish citizens.
Israel, with a population of about 9 million, has almost 350,000 confirmed COVID-19 case infections. Nearly 3,000 people have died. As a result, the government is now considering new restrictions ahead of the midwinter holiday of Hanukkah. Stephanie Freed reports from Tel Aviv.
The warning right now that's coming from health officials is that Israel's on the cusp of a third wave. Looking sheerly at the numbers, Israel went beyond the positive case numbers, went beyond 11,000. That's the first time that's happened since October. That's about a 2.3% positive to testing rate. That being said, testing numbers are also up. So what is happening? The government's warning that there could be a curfew, there could be a lockdown. They're not sure. Mixed and conflicting reports, and that comes as Israel's about to enter its Hanukkah holiday, and in the West Bank and the Christian sectors going into the Christmas holidays. Speaking of the West Bank, there's also a rise in numbers within Palestinian Authority-controlled areas. So a lockdown has been implemented there for 2 days throughout the West Bank. That's amidst a 2-week curfew that's already ongoing there. In Gaza, numbers also on the rise. Mosques, universities, schools now closed to try and get those numbers to come down. On the flip side, the positive side, Israel's government announced that it is buying vaccines. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu Friday said that Israel will be buying 6 million vaccines from Moderna. Moderna has a 94% effective rate on testing with the Moderna vaccine. That's up from 2 million that the country was originally purchasing from that pharmaceutical company as well. Israel reportedly is buying, let's see here, 4 million doses that would vaccinate 2 million people from Pfizer Pharmaceutical. Now, that's been approved by UK's regulatory board, not by the FDA. That could be in Israel as early as the end of December. They may start vaccinating before that FDA approval.
The Food and Agriculture Organization says the number of people facing acute hunger in the Democratic Republic of Congo has risen dramatically since last year. The UN agency says nearly 22 million people in the Central African nation have been pushed to the brink of starvation by ongoing conflict and effects of the pandemic. CGTN's Christopher Mringa has more from Kinshasa.
A report by the Food and Agriculture Organization has painted a grim picture of the hunger crisis in the DRC. It says the number of people facing acute hunger has risen from 15.6 million last year to 21.8 million this year, making the DRC the world's largest hunger crisis. The most affected areas are in the east, northeast, and the central part of the country. Ongoing conflicts there have disrupted the livelihoods of thousands of people. Their situation has been made worse by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and natural disasters. The Food and Agriculture Organization says continued insecurity could take the country over the edge and worsen the humanitarian situation. The UN agency is calling on donors and the DRC government to provide more support to the populations facing acute hunger. Chris Chamringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Residents in South Africa's coastal city of Durban are still reeling after an explosion rocked the engine oil refinery early on Friday. Firefighters managed to extinguish the blaze in just a few hours, but questions are being asked by the residents in the area around safety of the refinery. CGTN's Julie Shire has the details.
Marybank residents in South Africa were shaken by a massive explosion at the engine oil refinery. Debbie Green lives opposite the site where the blast happened.
We heard like a bang. Actually thought it was like a bomb right outside my door, but I was standing by my gate. It was crazy because our windows were rattling. Children were screaming, everybody was screaming. It was like just so dramatic and so nerve-wracking. We didn't know what was happening until we came out, because this bang just actually hit us back into our houses. And we came out, we saw now it was engine burning.
Firefighters brought the blaze under control quickly, but Green says residents are concerned for their safety.
Obviously, we don't feel safe. I mean, it's not the first time this is happening, not the second time this is happening. We don't feel safe, but where to go? You know what, I've been living here, I've been brought up here for over 40 years. We're not all blessed and rich, where we can just go and move out of the area and buy houses and things.
No major fuel supply disruptions are expected, but 7 workers who were on site were treated by emergency personnel.
Patients weren't injured from the actual blast itself, but rather had respiratory complications as a result of smoke inhalation, and they were treated by the paramedics at the scene and transported to hospital. They were all in a stable condition.
Engen is one of South Africa's biggest petroleum producers. The company has declined to comment on the cause of the blast, but a full investigation is being conducted. Julie Shire, CGTN, Marybank.
More news after the break. Here's what you can expect. China donates medical supplies to South Sudan to help tackle COVID-19 pandemic. And we look at how former addicts in Uganda are helping to reform street families.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Well, China is donating more medical equipment to South Sudan to help Africa's youngest nation tackle the pandemic. Beijing is also pledging to keep sending medical teams to Juba to help develop the country's health sector. CGTN's Patrick Oyet reports.
China is donating medical supplies, including ventilators and blood oxygen saturation monitors worth $160,000. Beijing says it will continue supporting the development of South Sudan's health sector.
We hope that with support from China and other members of the international community, the health service here in South Sudan will continue to develop and will bring benefits to the local South Sudanese people.
The World Health Organization ranks South Sudan among countries with the least developed health infrastructure. The country relies heavily on donated medical supplies from its international partners. South Sudan's health ministry says the medical equipment given by China will be distributed to coronavirus management centers across the country.
This is number 6 times that we are receiving donations from China during the last few months as we have been fighting COVID-19. The Chinese people have been behind us and we are ever so grateful.
South Sudan's government says China is the biggest donor of medical supplies to the country. China also continues to send its medical teams to work in South Sudan's hospitals. It also provides training to South Sudanese medical personnel. Beijing says it is now working to link major hospitals in South Sudan to universities of medicine in China. South Sudan's health ministry says the cooperation with China is helping develop health infrastructure in the Eastern African country. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
In Uganda, a group of social workers locally known as street uncles are transforming the lives of young people living in slums. They're former addicts who are now inspiring young people to live a life free of drugs. CGTN's Hilary Yesiga reports.
A former street child born in Kisenyi, one of the poorest communities in Uganda's capital, Kampala. Marco Wori is using his life experience to help the young people here give up on drug addiction.
Drugs is not the solution, but the solution is we. We are the one carrying the solution. These children have no problem, the youth have no problem, but they are left out.
Most of these young people sniff a cocktail of harmful drugs such as heroin, aviation fuel, and marijuana. The street uncles have now teamed up to help them get off the street and live a responsible life.
I started the art and craft. So I use the art, performing arts and visual arts to implement like programs to change, attitude change among vulnerable youth, children, and older people. That's why I see wherever I stay, there are people who are working.
Government figures show that about 20 children become homeless every day. But through this social interaction with the street uncles, many of them have been reunited with their families. The street uncles say they've reunited over 100 children with their parents. These former street children say they are grateful to have a new life.
He found me like a destitute, without any place of abode and nothing to eat. He taught me how to do art and craft.
He found me when I was still young on the street. It's now coming to 10 years. He helped me start a small business.
According to figures from Uganda Harm Reduction Network, a local non-government organization, close to 1 million people in Uganda use illicit drugs. Street uncles believe their approach is part of a bigger solution to reduce drug abuse in the country. Hilary Isga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
We head over to North Africa in Egypt, where those in the film industry attended the 42nd edition of the Cairo Film Festival. The event that will take place over a 9-day period will be screening about 80 films from 40 countries. Here's CGTN's Wanja Mugai with the story.
It's all glam and glitz in Cairo at the launch event of the 42nd Cairo International Film Festival. Egyptian celebrities, filmmakers and fashionistas graced the event, with high hopes of a successful 2020 edition despite the pandemic.
Today is the launch of the Cairo Film Festival. I think this is an important point, especially given that all festivals across the world have stopped. Very few have been completed. We are all happy with this large event.
The festival kicks off on the 19th of November through to the 28th. During the 10 days, about 80 films from 40 countries will be screened. And despite the coronavirus scare, thespians are braving the situation.
Of course, like you can see here, it's almost similar back to normal. So here's me hoping that everyone is negative and all good. But you know, cinema needs to be seen in theatres. It needs to be seen on the big screen. It can't be seen on a small 13-inch laptop.
In Africa, Egypt comes in second after South Africa to have the most cases of COVID-19. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reports above 117,000 infections so far. But even with the glaring statistics, film lovers and makers are optimistic.
From what I see, people are distributing masks and sanitizers, but of course there is a personal responsibility for everyone. This is what matters.
In the meantime, most are eager to take part in the most prestigious event on the Egyptian calendar. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
Sport news is coming up after the break. Here's a headline. Late Senegal World Cup hero Papa Diop awarded highest honor by President Macky Sall.